I have mast cell. I still treat myself that way. But this is my healing journey. And I realized how I can control my mast cells instead of my mast cells controlling me.
So the big question is this. We know spontaneous remissions and so-called miracle cures exist. We also know they aren't so spontaneous after all. I'm living proof of this, having cured my quote-unquote incurable illness. There's something to how this happens. So how do we, as humans with chronic symptoms, tap into this so-called miraculous healing capacity? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Dr. Erin Hayford, and welcome to the Sacred Illness Podcast. Before we begin today's episode, just my standard medical disclaimer. This podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The content should not be considered a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional regarding any medical concerns. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Sacred Illness Podcast. Today, I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Stacey Waterbury from North Carolina. She is going to be sharing with us her story about MCAS, which is short for mast cell activation syndrome. So we're going to hear her story and how she has worked with this condition and how it has really opened up a door for her in her life and put her on a path that she probably wouldn't be on otherwise. Without further ado, thank you for being here, Stacey. Thank you so much for being willing to come on here. And just so for people who maybe don't know, can you maybe just give us a little bit of information about MCAS, and then we can take it from there with your story?
So for mast cell activation disorder, in your body, you have mast cells, and they're your protectors, and they protect you. So every time you get a cut or, an injury, your mast cells come to your body to protect you and to help you to heal. And with mast cell activation disorder, they go a little haywire, for lack of a better way to explain it. They soldier up and they think everything is dangerous. Everything is a danger to your body. So as simple as, a food, and you put it in your mouth and the mast cells are like, oh, no, that's dangerous. And they come and they bring all sorts of things with them, including all different types of cells. There's so many, and they just cause them to come in too many, basically. Mm-hmm. And once you start getting symptoms, so you maybe can't breathe because the cytokines are just coming and you can't breathe. And then you're itching because the histamine is so high, and it starts throwing all of this all at once in your body, and your body becomes allergic to life, basically. Mm-hmm. So you are just allergic. Mast cells are so important in our health. They are really important. And this is not their job. Their job is to keep you safe, but they're not to overdo it. Their job is not to come and cause such debilitating symptoms. And when you have something like mast cell activation disorder, they've gone haywire. They've lost their minds, basically, because they think that everything is dangerous. So it's a little bit more common now, but it wasn't common, and it wasn't something that I understood when it happened for me. And a lot of times with mast cell, when you have it, it's usually a trigger. So it's like a trigger. Something will happen that will trigger this inside your body. So for me, it was a yellow jacket sting. So I was stung by a yellow jacket, and I had what you would call a delayed reaction. And 2 days later, I was going into anaphylactic shock. And my sister, and I don't recommend this to anybody, but my sister is allergic to bees, and they ended up having to stab me with her epi on the way to the hospital. So I've never been allergic. I wasn't allergic to anything growing up, nothing. I did have some underlying things, like I would react to the sun sometimes. And that was a little bit like as I was in my teenage years. And I have a tendency to get hives or get red in emotional reactions, or if I'm nervous or anything like that. And come to find out, that's actually a mast cell autonomic nervous system thing, where I'll just break out in hives on my chest and my neck, and I flush really bad. Wow. Which is also, a mast cell thing. So I would have those little things, like before this happened, just little things. But when I got stung, that was what triggered it. Now, most people with mast cell, it came with a trigger. Most people can go backwards to figure out what triggered that. But at that time, that one trigger, it turns something on in your body. And your mast cells are literally, they're trying to protect you from everything. There's nothing safe anymore, like nothing. And it's very scary. It's very scary. And after I had gotten stung and went through that, after that, I just started having really strange symptoms. And I'd say to my husband, I'm like, do you see this rash on my neck? And he'd be like, well, it looks a little red. And I'm like, no, like there's a rash. And I was really like dizzy. And like I would feel like very brain fog, like I couldn't get my words out. So these are all, you have mast cells. If we go back to what mast cells, you have them in every part of your body, your brain, your heart, you have them everywhere, and they're in your whole body. So it's an all body syndrome, or whatever we want to call it. It affects all parts of your body, and it's different for every single person. For one person, it may be more of a gastro issue, where it's really bad. Another person, it could be, where they get really bad migraines or, brain fog. Some people, it's really just allergy symptoms. A lot of them, then it's really bad. But once it's triggered, it's just, you feel like you have no control and you don't know what to do. You're just symptom after symptom after symptom. And I would just get these just strange things. I wasn't sleeping well, and that's not normal for me. And I was, not being able to control my body temperature. That was so strange. So I wanted to mention this. So my sister, my oldest sister, she had similar issues. She didn't live where I lived at that time. She lived in a different state, and she had similar issues, but we didn't really know the whole story with her. And nobody knew what was wrong with her. And they told her that she had histamine intolerance, which I know that you're familiar with that also. And most of your people that will be watching that will be familiar with this. So at first I was like, my sister's like, you probably just have histamine intolerance. And I was like, well, what is that? What does that mean? And she's like, you just have to cut out all histamine. You have to watch what you're eating. You have to take all these medicines. And I was like, I don't know. I'm not really one to want to do stuff like that. And I was like, no, I'll just figure it out. So a year goes by, and I feel like I have no control, but it's nothing. This was only the first part. And a year later, I was picking up a towel and there was a yellow jacket on it, and it stung me in my belly.
Oh gosh.
And I went into anaphylactic shock. I had to be hit with an EpiPen again. And at that time I did end up getting EpiPens. I saw a physician's assistant. He didn't really know anything about this, but he was really willing to listen to what I had to say.
Great.
And he learned alongside with me, and he allowed me to make decisions and gave him thoughts, and so I actually have a different experience than a lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people. And to this day, he's still like, I don't know, but I trust you. And that's a beautiful thing. But so anyways, I got stung again. And that was it for me. That was when it flipped into everything. I was down to eating only 5 foods. I couldn't breathe air sometimes. I couldn't, it's a little emotional when you think about it, because it was just like everything that I knew, it just was taken away, and it seems so silly sometimes. And I think about it, I'm like, oh, it's food, Stacey, but it didn't take away just food. It took away everything. I couldn't go into people's houses sometimes. I couldn't, I live on land with my whole family actually. And my sisters are all there, and we would cook for each other. And so nobody knew how to feed me. And then when they would try, I would react and people would feel bad. And then I'd have to go home, and I was basically eating Benadryl like it was like that's all that I could do to feel okay, to function. My doctor, or my physician's assistant, after doing some research, he had told me about doing taking Zyrtec and Pepcid together, and then take Benadryl if you need it. So because this is your typical, if you were to look up mast cell, what do you do? And you can find the list of what you take, and all those medicines. And I was desperate. I have never, my son wasn't, he's older and he's in Alaska, and my daughter was 16 at that time. And she basically, it was like she lost her mom in that moment too, because all of a sudden I couldn't, it was awful. It was awful. And so I was desperate to feel better. And so I was taking these medicines and I was just taking Benadryl. It was the only way I can function. I just thought, this is my life now. There's nothing out there that tells you anything else. You go into these groups and I'm not at all giving a hard time about them. I don't mean it in a negative way, but for me, it was just a lot of stories of like the medicine that they take and how their life is just, it's awful, and how this, and I react to that, and there was just so much of this. And I was like, it's over for me. Like, it's over. What do I do from here? Like, where do I go from here? It's just, and when you have mast cell activation, it affects your mental health, your mast cells. Now I mentioned they're in your brain and all of that, but it causes like anxiety, extreme anxiety. And there's moments of like feeling like almost like a rage inside of you, like this, like, you don't know why. I was never that person. Stacey's the good girl. She's the quiet girl. She's the kind girl. She's the sweet girl. And all of a sudden there was none of that. It was, Stacey is sick. Stacey is frustrated, anxious. Everything that I was trying to figure out just kept telling me that this is how it's going to be. Like, I didn't hear how people healed it. And you would see these little blips. Now, I use the word healed, but I'm going to use that in a, like, I have mast cell. I still treat myself that way. But this is my healing journey. And I realized how I can control my mast cells instead of my mast cells controlling me. So it's not like you'll hear some of those stories and somebody's like, oh, I took just black seed oil and it's gone. Like, and I get it, but that's not, like, there's just all these different things out there. And you just don't know. But I didn't give up. I became obsessive a little bit about it because I like to figure things out. I want to know. And my family is the same way. And I have 3 sisters and they're very much that way. And my baby sister, I mean, she's not a baby, but she was so helpful in like really like figuring things out. And so I went on a low histamine diet. I changed my environment completely. I cleared the air that I breathe in my own house. I no longer used any certain types of things on my body because I would react to that anyways. But as I was doing all of these things, I was realizing also how important it is for your health to not poison yourself. And, like with these products or even the air, like what you're cleaning in your house. So I started there. And that's why I started cleaning up my environment. And then I was eating a low histamine diet, which if I could go back, I would have started with my mental health first. I would have started with dealing with my trauma. All these things that I did helped. They helped. I won't say they didn't. They helped, but I would have started with my trauma. I would have dealt with my nervous system. If I knew what I know now, I would have started there, because all these things, and I'm still taking the medicine. So that's masking everything. At one point in time, I put on clothes that I didn't wash that were brand new. I went into anaphylactic shock and had to be,
wow,
like, that's my body. Anything that touched my skin, it was so bad. I started with the whole like diet. I did all the things, everything I read, I did them all. And I could function, and I was functioning better in life, but I wasn't. It just felt like I was just band-aiding everything, and it just didn't feel like the answer. There had to be more, right? So there has to be more to this. Like, I can't, this can't be, like, I have to figure this out. There's something came up about a program about dealing with trauma. So I was like, maybe I'm just going to try something different. So I did start that, and I was like, this is a lot, it's your emotions and your thinking and feeling about, oh gosh, like that was triggering to me.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel good. My daughter, actually, she came to me one day and she told me that she wasn't okay and that she wanted to go to therapy. And I told her, you're fine, because that's what I've always told myself. So it took me like 10 minutes in my head to go, what'd you just do? What did you just do? She's not fine, and you're not fine, Stacey. You're not fine. You told yourself that your whole life, but you're not fine. And that was very uncomfortable for me to like admit that. And then I give her a lot of credit, my daughter, And I have done a lot of healing when it comes to that with my children because of realizing how I've stuffed everything down. So I needed my kids to do the same. They'll, if they were on here, they'd be like, she's great. She's a great mom, but you have to,
I get it.
I'm still, yes, I'm human and all of those things, but I see what I did, like we're just fine, and you ignore everything. Getting sick made me realize that I can't do that anymore. And I didn't realize that's where my answers actually lied.
Hey Sacred Illness listeners, Dr. Erin here. I'm quickly interrupting today's episode to put out the invitation to you or anyone you know who has a chronic illness or chronic symptoms that would like to come onto the podcast and share your story. Our goal is to invite folks onto the show who have worked with mind-body medicine modalities and noticed an improvement or even a complete resolution of symptoms using this potent medicine. If this describes you, check the link in the show notes below that will take you to a quick application to fill out that will give us some information about who you are, what your story is, and we'll take it from there. And again, if you know anyone who might also fit this description or like to come onto our show, please feel free to share the link with them as well. All right, let's get back to the episode.
I started therapy. That was just the start. And I was trying to kind of do that program thing. And I got turned on to Dr. Levine. Then it was game on from there. I was like, okay, I need to know. So I got certified as trauma-informed certification for nervous system regulation because I was like, I'm going to learn. I'm, learning from these amazing Dr. Ariel Schwartz, who is just amazing. And, learning about my vagus nerve. And it gives me the chills every time I think about it. Like, how did I not know this? How did I not know this? But I chose not to know it. I didn't want to deal with anything. And I'm like a super spiritual person, use the quotes, but I realized that my spiritual journey only held me back actually, because there was a lot of that spiritual bypassing, and then there was a lot of shaming, like, oh, because positive thoughts bring positive, it has its place. I'm still that person. But I also realized that I was almost gaslighting myself. Like, what are you doing wrong, Stacey? What did you must be doing something wrong. You're not being positive enough. You're not, meditating enough, or, doing your mantras. Did you do your mantras today? Oh, no, only healthy, happy thoughts. There's actually some trauma in that too. And I just realized that I just had to get real. I actually had to be real, and I had to be truthful. And that truth was pretty ugly. It was gets me every time. You can't ignore things. They're always going to be there, and they're going to come out some way. May it be sickness. May it be that your body thinks the whole world is dangerous because you've lived in fight or flight mode your whole entire life. My whole entire life. Like my whole entire life. How can your body keep up without finally going, okay, it's like, okay. And then I was just sick. And my body literally thought everything was dangerous. And as I was learning and I got, I took all these courses and I was doing this, I realized I was like, this is my nervous system. This is my autonomic this is my nervous system. Yes, it's my mast cells, but it's my nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh, I have the answers, but I didn't realize at first. I thought, okay, I'm going to go to therapy. And then I'll do some of these things, put your feet on the ground, ground yourself, do these breaths, all these woos and all of that kind of stuff. And they all have their place and they've done wonderful things for me. But I still just don't think I was getting as real as I needed to, like I wasn't actually shining that light on the truth of what it was, because my body, you just have to. And so with therapy, it's great. You're talking about it and all of this stuff, but there was something more that I was missing. And I knew that. So I didn't give up. I continued on my path. I continued to work with my nervous system and my vagus nerve. And I could see these little shifts. 4 years ago in August, so almost 4 years ago, my husband, he had a brain aneurysm. And I was on my healing journey. I was in therapy. I was learning all these things. I was I was so excited. I was like, I'm going to be healing. I'm going to do this. Look at me. So proud of myself. I didn't know that it could get worse if we were to talk about my trauma growing up. But when I went through what I went through with my husband, he wasn't supposed to make it, and it was it was it was very hard. And we were just we were at doing some work at somebody's house because my husband and my brother-in-law had a business, and he just fell over, and my sister and I were there, and we didn't know what was happening. And he had an aneurysm in the back of his head where his basal artery comes up, and it's the worst place you can have it. And it was our wedding anniversary, and they didn't think he was going to survive. This is COVID time. They actually made an exception and let me stay with him because they didn't think he'd live through the night. And that was a month's journey of being in the hospital with him, and him not being the same person that I married. I wasn't sure if he ever would be again. And everything that I was working towards and working on, it was gone. It was gone. There was no more of that. There was no more of that because I just had to take care of my husband, and I just had to figure out how to take care of my family. And I had to figure out what was I going to do? This man who was so big and strong and my everything and our everything, who took care of our family, is now, disabled. And just, he can't, like in the beginning, he couldn't be left alone. It was just a very traumatizing event. It's really hard to grieve somebody that's with you every day. That's a different kind of grief. So I did what I always done all my life, is I stuffed it all down, because you have to be grateful. How many times somebody told me, oh, be grateful he's alive. So I must not be, I can't feel anything else, like, don't feel anything else, Stacey. Don't, just be grateful, just keep moving. And you just stuff it down. And I just had to keep going. And anyways, that doesn't work.
No.
No. And so my nervous system got a little crazier after that. And the dysfunction of my autonomic nervous system got so extreme. And it was to the point where my heart, I'd just be sitting there and my heart would go up to 200 in 2 seconds.
Wow.
Just like that.
Yep.
And I'd shake and rattle. I couldn't control my body temperature. I was just so like dizzy. I would stand up out of bed, and all of a sudden my heart would just shoot right up. And here we are, again, in this situation of, you don't want to deal with this.
Yep.
So you go to the doctors, and even my most understanding doctor or physician's assistant, who was so amazing, it was a lot of like, he had so much empathy, because John was also my husband is John, and was his patient. So he knew, and he had so much empathy for me. But it was, you're having panic attacks, rightfully so, right? What I'm dealing with. But why would I be having these and I'm not feeling panicked in that moment? Why is my heart just going crazy? Why am I now reacting again to things? Why can't I control my body temperature? Why can't it was bad. And there was times where I just would sit there and I'd think, is this it? Like, I couldn't think that I couldn't fathom that my body wasn't giving out on me by the way that I felt. I was so consumed with wanting to be a good caregiver or be a good wife. And my kids are a mess. And you feel so much loss. I was so consumed by that. Like, I couldn't stop for a second and turn around and be like, Stacey, you know what you've learned. This is trauma. This is, like, I couldn't find my way back to that for a minute. In my body. What does your body do? Your body keeps score. We know that. Your body is going to, your symptoms are messages, we know that. And it was really hard for me to, it felt like it was the most inconvenient thing in the world too. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, we can't do this. Like, John needs me, my kids need me, my life needs me. I have to figure everything out. And I'm living in that place of like, I got to keep going, and I would come to work where I was homeschooling some people that I know their kids, and they were so great about it. But there was days where, even here, like, where they had to be home with me and watch me, because like my heart would just do crazy things, and I would be rattling and shaking, and I couldn't breathe. And I was like, this can't be happening. I need to take care of my family. So I could not get that rational thought. I couldn't come out of that place to say, hey, we need to stop for a second. You got to get back to doing the work, and you have to matter, that's a huge thing. Like, I have to matter, like my health, and I have to matter. So it got really bad. And then I was like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And then I just had that moment. But at going to the doctors, a lot of it was like panic attack, panic attack, panic, and I'm like, I get that what I've been through. And I know I have anxiety. I've had anxiety since I was a child. I know what anxiety is. I do. This is not anxiety. This is not, yes, I'm anxious because I don't feel well.
Right.
Yes, I'm anxious because, my husband had a brain aneurysm and everything I've been through. But that's not the end all. That's not the answer to everything. There's something more. And then I said, you're going to do this, Stacey. My physician's assistant actually said to me the other day on another note, he said to me, I'm in awe of you, Stacey. And he said, and just so you know, he said, you did this, even like with me being sick and like with my husband and all of this. He says, he said, you did this. You're where you are today because you did this, like you just didn't give up. Like he was just, and I think he was just trying to remind me that I had this strength, like I could keep doing this and I can matter and I can do this, It was a lot of years crunched into that, but there was a lot of, I felt so lost after what happened with my husband. And I just didn't know if I could, I could do it, if I could give myself what I needed, because I don't know, I just felt like I couldn't. And then I realized I just couldn't stay the way it was. It wasn't working. And I had to. Got back to it and got to work. And I did all the things and I worked and I did some EMDR therapy. My therapist is amazing. And one of the biggest things that I actually contribute is I tap. I've been tapping consistently for 2 years now, over 2 years. And to me, it's been a lifesaver. Tapping has brought such calm to my body and it's just really worked with my nervous system. I tell everybody all the time, like, you should tap, you should tap. But I did do those 2 things were super helpful. And my therapist that I see now is, I touched on the things that I needed to touch on that we don't. And I shine light on a lot of things that I refused to look at and see, because if I did, then that made them real. And when that becomes real, what does that look like? Was my life a sham? I was living in this fantasy world, or somehow was I going to lose everything I had or my family? And as dramatic as that sounds, like the thought of touching your trauma or going backwards, to really see what shaped who you are today and what affected you. And I did that. And that was hard. That was so hard. And with that, tapping, doing nervous system regulation exercises, learning to listen to my body, come back into my body, like just be, I don't think I've ever been in my body before. Like I don't. I honestly don't think, I think I lived outside of my body, like I never like loved and cared for it the way it deserved, because I don't think I ever thought that I was deserving of that, and when you grow up, we all have trauma, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of people, most people have some kind of trauma.
Agreed.
Because trauma can be so small, it's still real. People are like, that's nothing, but it affects us, but we can't just like ignore it. Like we can't ignore it. We have to bring it to light so that your body knows. You have to show your body that it's safe. You can't tell it. Yes, tell it, please. Also do that, because I do tell myself, like, I'm like, if I'm having moments, I'm like, before I came on here, I tapped a little and I'm like, I am safe, reminding my body that, hey, we're here. You're safe. It's okay. So, but you have to show it. You have to show your body, and you have to go back inside your body, and you have to let your nervous system know that, no, that's not dangerous over there. No, that's not true. Because, there's so many stories that we've created in our bodies or our nervous system, and those stories aren't true. Your nervous system's job is to protect you. It doesn't go with anything else. It's just wants to protect you. And it's everything that you've been through, your trauma, it marks you. It's like a wound. I think Dr. Gabor Mate, right? He says how it's more of a psychic wound, where as you're growing and you're going, it's touched and it will be aggravated and you're triggered. And you really have to heal those wounds But how do you heal a wound if you're ignoring it all your life, or you're pretending it's not there? You're telling yourself, just, you're fine. That's Stacey, you're fine. Stacey, you're fine. Buck it up. Like, nope, there's no time for you. I lived in a world where it was like, I tried to like micromanage and control everything around me. I was everybody's somebody, because that's what filled my cup, because I felt so empty inside and so disconnected from myself. And that's, that's how I lived my life.
Hi everyone, Dr. Erin here. So by now you're starting to get an idea of some of what the sacred illness paradigm is all about. The sacred illness paradigm is all about this question of what is your illness inviting you to become? What is it that lies within each of us that allows some of us to acquire so-called spontaneous healing or remissions? And what is the key to unlocking that innate self-healing capacity in each and every one of us? The Sacred Illness Blueprint is something that I developed as a guide to help you walk through this process step by step to learn how to move deeper and deeper within yourself to find these layers of dysregulation, of trauma, of limiting beliefs, of things that you're holding within your system that are keeping you small, stuck, and sick. Ultimately, if we ignore the mind-body connection and are not exploring the ways in which our nervous system continues to be dysregulated or in a chronic state of activation and stress, any healing modality that we put into our body from the outside in is going to be less effective, if not effective at all. So if you are currently feeling stuck, lost, confused, or disillusioned in your healing journey, feeling like you have tried so many things, you have tried so many modalities, you have worked with so many providers, and you're just not seeing the results you want, know that this is normal, and of course you're not, because this foundational mind-body connection is often, if not always, missed in all of these modalities. And just like we can't build a house on top of sand, our healing cannot grow and blossom and be strong and successful if the foundation is not laid first. So rather than doing something different but similar to everything you have tried before and expecting different results, I encourage you to consider doing something different altogether. This is where I invite you to explore the Sacred Illness Group Coaching Program. This is a low-cost monthly membership option that I have created. It's constantly open, constantly enrolling, where you can begin to explore this completely different way of engaging in your health, in your body, in your illness, and in your healing process. What is provided inside this group coaching program is the blueprint that lays the foundation and lays the path out for you to follow to begin to explore these deeper aspects of health, to truly get at the root of what is causing your illness, and from there allowing all other modalities to blossom so that you can actually start to see the changes and the healing take place in your body that you have been expecting and wanting all along. If you're ready and want to learn more, head on over to aurorasomatic.com, and at the top of the screen, click on Group Coaching, where you can read all about it and become a member today. I can't wait to see you on the inside, and for now, let's get back to the podcast.
There's so much grief, right? I never allowed myself to grieve, and I never allowed myself to grieve my childhood, or, my absent mother, or my innocence as a child, due to family members. I didn't allow myself any of that. I gave everybody excuses. Oh, well, they've been through a lot. But did I give myself any of that? No. It was like, you just keep going, keep going, stay quiet, stay small, and just be there for everybody else, and you don't realize it until you have to. So what did sickness bring? Brought me to today. Was there gifts in that? Yeah. Do I wish I didn't have to go through that? Yes. But here I am, right? And I would say, about over 18 months of really good with the mast cell thing. Really good. And what can I say is the one thing that I did is I dealt with my trauma, and I dealt with my nervous system, and I went inside for the first time, and I touched all those places inside me. And, I did the, shadow work, if that's what we want to call it, or I met with my little girl, and I find myself constantly, like, tell my therapist all the time, it's like I just kneel down sometimes when I'm having those moments, and I can see me young, and just put my hands on her arms and just let her know, like, you're okay. It's okay. And by loving myself and loving my body, I trust my body. I never trusted anybody, not even my body, not myself. I tell my body all the time, or when I'm tapping or something, like, I trust you. I trust my body. I trust you to do what I need. And even when things go wrong, or if I start feeling something, it doesn't turn into that catastrophic thinking or that alarm, like, oh no, everything's going to go wrong again. It's like, okay, let's come back. Like, where are we right now? What can I do for you, Stacey? Like, what can I do for you? And honestly, it doesn't mean that every day is a great day. I don't, especially when you're dealing with trauma. I have PTSD from what happened as a child, come to find out, but also what happened with John. It's a huge one.
Yeah.
So I'm still have moments where, it's hard. But once I learned how to love myself and my body and learn about my nervous system, I'm not rattling on the ground and shaking. My heart's not at 200 and I can't control my body temperature. I'm not breaking out in hives, all over the place. I'm not like, can't take in a deep breath. Like, I'm not having those moments anymore. And I honestly, I contribute it to my nervous system regulation. And I feel like it's such a gift that needs to be given to so many people. And you don't even have to have chronic illness. And I just wish that you could just sprinkle it for everybody and just be like, here, just this now, because you don't want to be, here. Being sick is awful. It's awful. And I blamed myself. I shamed myself. I didn't think, and like I said, that whole spiritual bypassing thing, like it was like, you must not be thinking so positive, or, what did you do? And then I just realized that I just have to love myself and my body. And I have to let my body know it's safe in this world. And I have some days where I still don't feel safe, but I know it and I feel it. I allow it and I allow my feelings, good or bad. And it's been quite a journey. One that I can say that I'm, have more gratitude and I'm thankful for now. Sometimes it was hard because it felt like such a punishment. Even what happened with my husband, it's like, why? At that point in time, I'm just looking to the universe and I'm like, come on, you got to be kidding me. Like, this is a joke, like the whole, and then people say to you, oh, you're not given more than you can handle.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, like, please. And anybody, like, I couldn't handle people saying stuff like that to me. And then I realized through therapy and EMDR work and just doing my work is that I can have all these feelings and I can feel them all. And they're not bad. Like, I actually got angry. My therapist loves when I get angry. But she's like, it's needed, because I thought it was such a bad thing, growing up with so much of that, or, like it was just a bad thing. Don't get angry. Don't, and I found healing. And when I was just like, like I said, like, universe, what? Come on, really? And like being frustrated about something or feeling angry that I lost some stuff that I feel maybe I wish that I didn't, or like, I wish, just some things I just, they were pretty awful. And I pretended that they didn't exist, or I gave excuses for people. And then I realized that I could do all of this and I can still be the same person that I always was, this loving and kind person, but with boundaries and that same loving kindness for myself.
Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Sacred Illness Podcast. If you find this information shared here inspirational and educational, please share it with those you think would benefit from this work. To take this work deeper yourself, check out our website, www.aurorasomatic.com, where you can explore our coaching, community, and course options. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel, where new content is coming out all the time, intended to inspire, awaken, and help you deepen your relationship with yourself, your life, and your world. We'll see you next time.